Preparing to stream. Great. There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another weekly coaching session from the Backyard Peace Project Pros. So here are our experts again, our regulars here, ready to have a deep conversation on a Wednesday morning. And oh God, hang on, you can hear that?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, how do I stop that?
Stop what? I can hear you. You are probably hearing yourself, so you need to switch off the YouTube in the background. There might be another window open where you hear yourself talking. We can't hear it.
Okay.
I love that. We should make a blooper reel of all the live streaming things. It's fun. We are learning. You need to find the window in the background that popped up when you started a live stream and close that window down. It's still live streaming, but you would hear yourself time delayed.
All right, sorry guys. I'm not a techie person, so hopefully that will be fine now. So yeah, take two. We are on a live call, and live means fun. And this week on a Wednesday morning, with what's going on in the world right now, and there's a lot going on in the world right now that is directly and indirectly affecting us in some ways, directly or indirectly affecting people that we love. I wanted to talk about what does it look like today to have courage in the way that we show up daily. So for me, I feel that the power is in the ways that we communicate, the ways that we show up, the decisions that we make. It doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be showy. But I just feel like at the moment, I feel like there's a tipping point where ordinary good people have basically reached or are reaching saturation point and are deciding we need to come together and change things ourselves. And that's what the Backyard Peace Project is all about. It's about good people coming together and choosing a different way forward, choosing inclusivity, choosing belonging, choosing respect for other people's choices, choosing love, right? And like choosing love, it brings up these amazing images of like the 60s and hearts and sparkles and everybody's got daisy red rings on their hair. But actually loving on a daily basis in our daily lives can be really challenging. Like to reach through confrontation with love, to reach through one of your children being hurt, to reach through that with love, to try and make that your intention in every interaction that you have, especially if someone's going through something and they're sharing that pain with you in really inappropriate ways, aggressively. Like you've got to be pretty badass to choose love right now. So I wanted to talk to you about what does courage mean for you in your daily life? Where do you see it happening? What do you think are the most important things for us to do that is within our control today to make a difference?
Yeah, I personally think intention was a key word that you just used. Getting up intentionally, doing something every day for yourself first, because it's like we say in the Backyard Project, it starts with us. And, being kind to yourself first, being loving to yourself first, you have to do that so you can give to others. And I know other communities, like with the Kindness Kids Project and the Backyard Peace Project and other values, they all connect. And there are so many people reaching out, creating more groups with the emphasis being on love, sharing the love right now. and holding space for each other, for yourself and them, and for each other. And people are struggling with that. They're saying they're looking at the big picture of what's going on, but I can't do that. I'm saying, well, yeah, you can look within. Do it for yourself. If you can't do it for others, the others will come. And yeah, it's this whole big, it's messy, but it's there. But it's doing something intentionally, which for me is the key thing.
I love that. I love that word intention with courage. You know, the first word that came up for me when you said that was authenticity. You know, having the courage to really step into your authentic self and your opinion that you have about it, standing behind that, but also not judging people for their opinion. I think that is probably the trickiest part in all of us, because we are human beings. Human beings judge, you know, yet making an effort, having the intention to listen to people and not having to come in strong when it doesn't really align with our opinion, but rather using that strength to stand stronger in our opinion, if that makes sense. We don't have to put that upon other people. It's not our mission to change everybody's opinion about something, in particular with what's going on in this world with politics. Yet I feel it is our mission to really live our truth, in particular with what we're doing here with the Back Your Peace Project, to really have that intention of peace and love in our hearts with everything that we do, and let that show and shine through our actions. That's what comes up for me when you said that.
And I think there's a big part of the I guess all the words coming together there. It's like the intention, the authenticity, and the back behind the courage is the courage to actually, I guess, learn about yourself within that space. Because how do you have compassion for someone else? How do you have love or care for someone else if you haven't started with you, if you haven't done the work? Because you can't, it's hard to have empathy if you're living in your own drama. And then especially how things are getting heightened now, the drama seems to continue because people are being fed that. If they are watching and listening and taking that on board as the absolute truth. Now, the courage within that is to listen to your heart and take the test and go, is this actually real? Like, sit with the moments, sit with the people, sit with the opinions of what's actually happening and go, is this really happening? Is there a side, I guess, objective behind what's being projected into the world, and for what purpose? And I guess coming back to the authenticity and the courage within that space is being able to give yourself space enough to feel peace in your heart when the challenge and the chaos happen. Yeah.
That just
because
landed.
when
Wow.
you can find that in within the chaos, so it's really hard when you're in the emotion of it all, but the emotion is part of the journey to find that space. And we were talking about this yesterday. It was about the emotions that are coming up, that are challenging, that are triggering, that are maybe activating some sort of trauma, is a great space to start, because it's always easy when it's easy and when you're happy and everything's fun and nice. Yet the challenge and the I guess the triggering is where you get to grow and to find that space to have the courage to step into your own power and your own ability to then have that space to be in your truth. Now, unless you're not in your truth, then how do you do that for someone else? And I think with the mission of what we're creating here is to bring people into that space by doing the work and having the opportunities to work with so many different modalities and practitioners to help people step into their truth and their abilities to be in a compassionate state. And through global trauma creates an opportunity within that space. I'm not sure if everyone saw this, but I remember straight after all the lockdown shenanigans happened, there was like this view in people's eyes, in strangers' eyes, are going, I see you. I understand that you've been through some challenge. Me too.
Yeah.
So the compassion was an automated process of a human personality trait in the community.
There's such deep connection that happened through that. Because
Yeah.
we were all in the exact same thing. There was no explanation needed. There was just that witnessing of each other's, fears and pains and frustrations. And that really formed such a deep connection. It was incredible to see that.
I think taking everything that you said, which really resonates with me, but also taking it another step forward. And something that I delved into a few years ago was that I am that, I am. And for me, it's the compassion that you were talking about, Paul, but being able to apply it in the most difficult circumstances. And so for me, and that comes back again to what you were talking about being at peace with yourself. So when you can sort of embrace all of yourself, so all of the bits that you don't really want people to see, all of the bits you're proud of, all of the bits you need to continue to work on, all of the pieces of you, if you can embrace them all and sort of accept all of them and love all of them, then you have this level of peace where you can look at somebody else and reach through with the compassion. And I think there's a miscommunication that if you reach through with compassion, you're saying, I'm condoning what you're doing, or I'm condoning your decision, or I'm saying it's okay. And I don't believe that that's true. I can see someone's done something terribly, terribly wrong. And obviously there needs to be consequences. We live in a civilized society where there are rules and, all of those sorts of things. However, I can also take it one step more in perspective and say, if I had experienced that person's life, the way they've been treated, the way they've been interacted with, the way they've been taught, the way they've been, experiencing them around you, if I had experienced those exact same things, I'm capable of making that choice. I'm capable of doing wrong. And having compassion for where they've come from. And this has been a really interesting conversation that I've had with my kids over the years, where they've had some difficulty. As we all know, my children have been hospitalized multiple times through bullying. And it's been an interesting conversation to have with them, where we've unpacked what's happened and the possible reasons why it's happened. And being able to reach through with compassion for the person that's hurt us, in the sense that saying, I remember there was one particular female student that was giving Sky a really, really hard time. And this particular girl threw a piece of fruit at another student's head who was a male and very, very meek and very, very shy and was, going through a difficult time. And Sky, being fiercely protective of everybody, she launched in and told this girl off and said, how dare you do that, blah, 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 blah. And so when we were unpacking it, inevitably, as I've been raising my children, their go-to is rolling their eyes at me. Because we go a bit deeper, we unpack it, we have a little bit of a conversation, and they're like, oh my God, can't you just say well done for, protecting? And I say, absolutely, that's part of the conversation. Like, well done. I'm really proud of you for stepping forward and saying that that's not okay. But when she'd confronted this girl had replied to Sky, well, it's all right for you because you've got a mum and dad at home, you've got a stable home life, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And I said to Sky, yeah, she's kind of right. And Sky was like, ugh. And I was like, but she was mid-teen at the time. But I said, but you have got all of those things. And so it's easier for you to be able to make those decisions because you have got a very supportive family who are very together and connected and for you and standing for you and advocating for you and all of those things. And I said, I'm not condoning what she's done, but I can understand the chaoticness of her being, that she's reacted in an instant and shared her pain in an appropriate way. and, you know, again faced a negative backlash, which is actually not what she's searching for. So, but what it's been able to do is give my kids a much broader view of situations and the complexity. Is that a word? If I just made that up?
Complexity.
No, it's complexity now. I just made it up.
Cool. Let's go with
that. Okay, the complex nature of the interactions, which at face value can seem black and white.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly it, you know, the understanding part. I think that's where a lot of us, and I'm saying us deliberately here, you know, like us as a society fall short. The understanding of it, the witnessing it, you know, the really seeing where that's actually coming from. Because when we think of what's happening in the world right now with politics, we are shown what they want us to see. We don't always get, or ever, I should say, the whole picture. We don't really know the exact truth of all of it. All we have is our hearts to come back to that and trust what we see, what we feel, and to come back to that as a source of what is it that I can do right now. And that starts with things like that, you know, understanding why people do something that feels mean to us or feels wrong to us. Once we get the whole picture, there is so much more compassion than hate or annoyance or frustration. And that's where I feel we need to all get to. And you know what just came up for me was that Ho'oponopono, who's familiar with that. Yeah, I love this so much when you think about how it all started and that there was this, please correct me if I do get my facts wrong here, but as far as I know, it started with a Hawaiian doctor who read the files of an entire ward and healed them by just praying the Ho'oponopono prayer on those files. He had never even met those people and healed an entire ward. And to me, it comes back to exactly that simplicity of it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's so simple. The understanding what actually caused people to act in a way that is hurtful or harmful to others. That's where compassion comes in. And without that compassion, I think it's almost impossible to heal something or someone.
I love that you brought the Ho'oponopono. Sorry, Paul. I was just going to say, I was discussing this with a client of mine, the Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing with that client, because for me, the Ho'oponopono is exactly what we've been talking about. It's opening ourselves up to the potential of, I could have, you know, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry, I've fallen short, you know, I love you, you know, please forgive me. Because there's, you know, we all go around pretending that we're perfect. We're not. We make mistakes. We hurt people's feelings. Sometimes we snap. We're not perfect. But please forgive me. Thank you. You know, and having that gratitude. And I was trying to work with him with that because he needed a breakthrough and he was so attached to being right and the other person in the situation being wrong. And at that point in working with him, I thought, I can't take you any further because you are so attached to ego and you're so attached to being right over this person. You're never going to get beyond this situation. Paul, sorry, what were you going to say?
Not too sure, but I'll continue on like with what you're saying there. Not too sure. But I think that's a key element with this as well. Like we're saying, you know, compassion for everyone, peace for everyone, love for everyone. Yet not everyone is ready to take that on board. And I think, and you know, as a practitioner for a long time, of how many times I've been in a space where I wanted to drag the horse to the water to feed them and they wouldn't. So wanting to help and wanting to serve and wanting to be in a compassionate space all the time is fantastic. And also not always realistic as well in regards to people are ready when they're ready. And so putting in your energy onto 6 people who don't want to listen to, as opposed to one person who would listen, is more impactful on that one person, because then that goes into the 6 degrees of separation or the surrounding influences. One person, you just plant the seed with one person of the compassion and then that spreads, as opposed to challenging people to try and help them or drag them to the point of understanding if they're so strongly opinionated or have a strong belief system around what they believe. And I think that's part of it as well. Like it's to recognize the challenge or the ability to recognize when to tap out of that conversation and go and better use your energy on people who want to hear or people who want to grow. And I think that's an important part as well. And it's not to give up on the people that aren't willing to step into that space, but the more you find people to start to transform themselves, then that energy then transforms the collective at a base. And I think the basis of what we're talking about is everybody in a global sort of sense is feeling some challenge, yet some people are awake to what that challenge is and some people are still trying to figure it out.
And what you're alluding to there as well, Paul, if I may say, in my opinion, is that radical ownership over your life. And that's confronting. To take radical ownership over every aspect of your life is confronting because it's easier to go, it's somebody else's fault. I didn't choose this. It's not fair. And all of that may be true. But at the same time, we have the power to change it. And having radical responsibility over your life and ownership is really scary and liberating as well. And what I find is people who have a particularly strong self-esteem, strong sense of self, are living by some kind of ethics or code of conduct that they've decided for themselves, that they pretty much know where they stand in the world, they're more open to taking that radical ownership over their experience, because they know stepping into that is actually quite liberating and powerful. And you've got to take the stuff that we label as bad with the stuff that we label as good as being down to us and our choices.
Absolutely.
I see Rob smiling down at me. 2 choices, babe. He used to always say that to me. 2 choices, babe. Like, yeah. Oh, I love
So
it.
how do you guys think courage manifests then in our day-to-day life? How can we go out and be courageous in our daily lives, in our communities, in our families, in our workplaces? What does it look like?
I think speaking up about your beliefs, like for a long time before I started everything that I'm doing now, I found it really confronting to speak up about something that I believed in. And I remember, we just spoke about Facebook just before we came live, and I started off with, recording little video messages and posting them on Facebook and sharing them. And I got better and better at that because, we get better with practice. And this is where I'm getting to. We get better with practice. Once we start doing something, it feels more and more normal to us. And then Facebook Live came along and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this live. And although I had already worked up to a level where I never re-recorded videos, I did one take, I posted it, it was fine. But then I went live and all of a sudden the fear came in, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of what if I make a mistake? What if I forget something? What if? And then I can't re-record it. Boo-hoo, then I stop the Facebook Live or I do another one, whatever. But in that state, I remember being outside on the balcony and Rob was in the kitchen and I was like, don't come out, don't watch me. And I closed the balcony doors and I had bullet points written on the wall of what I wanted to say, what message I found so important to share with the world. And I forgot half of them and I was shaking and I was so nervous. And I came inside, I'm like, I forgot half of what I wanted to say. And this is where I thought it is so interesting to watch yourself when you want to share your opinion, when you stand up for something that you believe in. And then all of a sudden there is that fear of judgment coming in. Because Paul and I did the same training, like we met in a coaching training together. And there was a lot of that. It's not really the fear of speaking. It's a fear of judgment. What do people think of me when I'm on stage? What do people think about what I say, how I say it, what I wear, how I stand, my gestures that I use or not use, the ums and ahs. There's all of that coming in. And to me, coming back to the question, wrapping that all up, it's all about being courageous enough to stand for what you believe in and to share it and to do it until you feel really comfortable with it, until it doesn't take that much courage anymore to actually say that, because you're so used to sharing your opinion, talking about the Backyard Peace Project, things like that, where it will shift the world, it will make a profound impact on our lives, on so many other people's lives. and to stand up for that and share that. It takes courage. And the more often we do it, the more normal it becomes. And then it doesn't feel as courageous anymore. It becomes second nature. That's what I feel it looks like. Just do it until it feels really comfortable.
I love that, Marie. Just
Thank you.
everything that you just said. Yeah, just do it. Face your
Yeah.
fears. I've had to face a lot of fears lately. It's something that I've done. And I had a really big wobbly moment with it. But at the end of the day, it comes back to I've done it. I've put it out there. People are going to talk regardless of it. And it's just accepting you for who you are, what you do, what you believe in. And that brings a peace. That brings an inner peace once you do have that acceptance. And you just said it so beautifully with the example that you just gave. Yeah. So, yeah, just facing it, taking that control away from others and giving it back to yourself.
Yeah, I love what you were saying there, Jennifer. And what I was just going to add to that was what was going through my mind is I feel like it comes down to the courage to decide for ourselves. And, when you're in a situation, in which I've been in multiple times, and, there's somebody in front of you bad-mouthing somebody that you're connected to, like a mutual connection. And I've always felt uncomfortable with that. And I've always respected somebody's experience for sure. But also, I have always been a person that will decide for myself. And so I will verbalize, I've never had a problem with that person. I've always felt fine with
I
that
couldn't
person.
hear that, Cathy. You have always been a person that what for itself?
That decided for myself.
Decided. Yeah, thank you.
So I would always say, that might be your opinion, and I understand that that's your experience, but my experience has been this up until this point. And so not standing in silence, which might be misconstrued as agreement, but actually gently, but just firmly saying, that's not been my experience of that person. And I feel like to be able to speak that lovingly, respectfully, but also clearly, like I'm going to decide for myself based on the experiences that I have with that person. And I will choose how I go ahead based on my experience, And I do feel like that can be courageous in the sense that our natural state of being is to assimilate, to belong, to be part of a crowd, to be part of a pack, and to be verbalizing something different that might make you stand out, even to what you wear. Like I remember one of my boys getting really upset because I was wearing something very colorful, and somebody had made fun of me about it and said, oh, you shouldn't be wearing that and whatever. And my son was really worried, I think worried that I would be hurt. And I said, yeah, but darling, I said, all of the other parents in this room are wearing a uniform. They're all wearing a black tee and they're all wearing jeans. And so I'm obviously going to stand out if I wear anything different to that. And I said, I'm happy with what I'm wearing. I don't care what they think. But to stand out in any way, whether it's opinion, whether it's how we present ourselves with our fashion, whatever it is, it does take a level of courage, because survival means that we need to belong somewhere for protection.
Even if it belongs with us. Because we do have this shell that we put around ourselves, well, I do anyway, to protect me first before anyone else. Yeah. And it's a survival skill.
I really think that's such an important point, in particular when it comes to kids, what the lesson that you taught your son there, because I feel when you look at kids when they're little, they just want to belong, they want to be part of the crowd, they want to fit in. So their behavior shifts in a way so it becomes more and more acceptable. If they have different behavior to the crowd, they often get excluded or laughed at or whatever that might be. But the older they get, they realize that being different is actually something really amazing. And then we get to the point where we really own that being different and standing out. And then I have this beautiful image of Like, you know, that one red flower in that field of white flowers or whatever. If you don't stand out, how are you going to find all these other people that stand out too? Do you know what I mean? I get this image of when you stand out, when you actually stand up and above the crowd, then you see all the other people that do the same thing. And that's where you then belong. That's where you find your new circle. And that is something that I have experienced really strongly once I started speaking up about my very different belief on how to handle grief. You know, my whole life has become changing the narrative of grief, bringing lightness into grief. That is my biggest mission. And to stand up for that, it took a lot of courage, and it took a lot of having people tell me how grief is supposed to be dealt with. And I'm like, you're telling me you haven't even experienced it. I've walked through it. I know that my stuff works. And I know that I prefer what I have done to what society expected of me to do. And for a fact, I know that my boys prefer to the path that I've taken them on. So if I hadn't stood up for that, and it did take a lot of courage, I would have not found the entire crowd that I know now that are aligned with my message. I honestly thought I was all alone with my message, and I'm not. There are so many other people who have found lightness in grief, who have found that you can heal through it, who have found the path to healing and not accept what society tells you, that you can't ever heal it and it'll stay with you forever. Well, I don't believe it. I've shown you differently, and I would love to show others too. And that really took a whole lot of courage. But again, if I hadn't stood up, I had not found the crowd that I'm with now, and I freaking love it. It's that sense of belonging and a sense of a way bigger mission, a mission that is so much bigger than just me or my little family.
Yeah, it's taking that first step, isn't it, with the understanding of knowing that not everyone's going to be with you, not everyone's going to agree. But standing up, being courageous enough to stand up for what you believe in, and others will come to you. People will drop off, but you will find others will gravitate to you.
The right people
and I think we're seeing that in the world.
And the right people will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing in the groups that I'm in with the Backyard Project and the Kindness Kids in particular, my whole, I know it's all online, but my whole everything has changed. So many have just fallen away. What's the word? Just organically or whatever it is, they've just left.
Natural
all
selection.
These have come in, all come in with that same message of, you know, putting out to the world of being courageous and standing up to certain things that are happening with love and kindness and heart and safe spaces. But it's taken that first step, which is really hard. It's really difficult to do, especially when you think there's just you, but then you realise there's not just you. Like you've just given a great example of that. Yeah.
And Paul and Cathy both know what it took me to get there, because Cathy has done some really, really deep work with me to address that fear that was roaring up at some stage. And Paul, I'm still working with him on a regular basis. We do our breathwork sessions every Tuesday, and every Tuesday we walk around like, see you tomorrow on the Backyard Peace Project. So, yeah, it's like,
but that's a good thing,
finding
because
the right
you took
people
that
to
first
support
step.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
thank you.
what would have happened if you hadn't have taken that first step to see Cathy, you know, and now to work with Paul, your life would be
different, very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
I do feel as well, just something came up for me while we were talking. There's an interesting dynamic where, especially as parents, we can have an unconscious bias. And that's dangerous, because if we're saying my child's not capable of doing that, saying that, and, you know, whatever, we're preventing the opportunity for them to grow into their full potential. And it's been interesting for me because one of my boys is going through something at the moment, and it's a group of boys, and they're good boys, but they're in a collective. They've found a sense of belonging. And these nice, kind boys are creating experiences that aren't so nice and kind for some other kids. But the interesting thing is, there are some parents who are very open to that and open to have a discussion, because it might be an indication that their child's going through something tricky and they need extra support, because the core of this child is good, the core of this child is kind. And so if they're demonstrating behaviors that aren't in alignment to that, maybe there's something there that needs some support, some extra attention, some guidance, right? But there are also parents, and I've had very open, I've very rarely had a parent say, no, I don't want to talk about this. Generally, I find parents are like, wow, if that's really the case, I'm so glad I know about it, because I need to lean in here and I need to have a conversation with my child and we need to unpack this. But the parents who have gone, not my child, I just think, wow, okay, that's interesting, because you have to have courage to be able to see someone that you would kill for, die for, and see that there's a possibility that there might be some decisions that they're making that aren't in alignment with who they truly are. And unless we open ourselves up to the possibility of that, we're holding that person, that little soul, back from unfolding into their true potential, because we're not giving the guidance and leadership that they need. So that's been an interesting dynamic that just came up while you were talking there, that I was thinking that's another thread of courage, is the courage to open ourselves up to more possibilities, and where those possibilities, whether we label them as negative or positive, can lead to hopefully a greater fantastic result for everybody involved. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I love that. It gave me goosebumps, to be honest, listening to that, because it also, as you said, it takes a lot of courage to open up to the fact that they might not always be perfect, and take that as the opportunity to grow, to understand, to learn compassion, all these things. It's incredible.
But to do that, you need to know that I'm not always perfect. Don't tell Ian. I know, shock horror. I hope he doesn't see this.
The horses.
But to open ourselves up to the possibility that we ourselves are not perfect, and we weren't intended to be. We are perfectly imperfect. But unless we admit that about ourselves, we don't give our kids the opportunity to have permission to be perfectly imperfect as well.
I so agree. I definitely became a way better parent when I realized that always trying to be perfect is the worst thing that I can do or be for my kids. The learning to admit to mistakes, and the learning to, learning of flexibility, let go of things that you thought had to be a certain way. That was a huge turning point for me, to let go of that perfectionism, because you can't ever achieve it anyway. So letting go of that softened me a lot as a parent, and also gave me the opportunity to learn flexibility, to learn compassion, to learn self-love and self-compassion, all of that in the same process as well. And by learning that, you are the better teacher, the better parent, because then you show your kids what it actually means to love yourself and to be compassionate towards you. That was huge for me. That was a game changer. And I'm still not perfect at not being perfect.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, it's such a powerful.
Like that's a big part of it too, isn't it? Like if we're talking about the kids and the kids' behaviors and the patterns, like everything that you guys are saying is just been looping into my mind of experience of life, and we talk about courage, and we don't recognize courage until it's a moment where you need to step in or step up, or you're going to step out, like, because sometimes and I guess going back to your story, Cass, of like you've always been in that space of owning your voice and your opinion, and being able to stand for that. My experience is complete opposite to that. I was the chameleon to hide and to say yes and to pretend so I would fit in. And I guess going into the emotions of what we do, like if anyone's out there and they're going through life and experiencing life, the quickest way, or the way to help yourself into a space of, I guess, courage and compassion for yourself, is to feel what it feels like when you're doing your thing. What I learned over time was, like, by continually distracting myself or wanting to be another person, I found that I got further and further away from me and knowing who I was. And so the behaviors, like you're saying, some of the other boys are having, like, things that I used to do was because I thought I would fit in, and I had no idea who I was. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Yet the journey has been a space of going through the pain and understanding that I didn't fit in certain spaces, and to feel okay with that. Like you're saying, Marie, about the red rose and the white flowers. Like, it's recognizing that over time, like, it's not like a quick fix. Sometimes it's a 20-year process or longer
Mm.
to recognize or to understand who we really are. And the challenge within that is sometimes the emotion is quite painful,
Mm.
and you don't want to see it, and you don't want to feel it, and you don't want to recognize that, oh, maybe I don't fit in. And so then I will do certain behaviors that will allow me to fit into the mold of the general population.
Mm.
And this could be the concept for what we began with, like what's happening in the world, and who doesn't want to sort of push those boundaries and have an opinion because we've been told a certain thing. This is who we need to be, and this is what we have to do. We have to conform and control, be controlled, and allow that to unfold. Yeah. I think as a collective, the globe is now starting to feel that pinch of the emotion of understanding that within themselves, it hurts to do what you're being told to do sometimes, because it doesn't fit your inner guidance, your soul, like your who you truly are. Your emotional guidance system will give you the cues every single time. And this is keep it as simple as that as a process. If we're looking into it, as if it feels good, do more of that. If it doesn't feel so good, do less of it or get rid of it completely. It's just as keep it as simple as possible. So then your body is giving you the signals to follow the guidance. And that's where ill health happens if we're following the opposite. And then we get vibrant health if we're following our ideas and our passions and our truth. And I think that the courage within that is to step aside for long enough. And it could be as simple as one breath, give yourself a moment, and to check in instead of being busy all the time. You go, is this really real? Is this my truth? If it is, great. If it isn't, then what can I do about it? And that's the radical responsibility of stepping in with courage to take charge of your life. And I think the more we start to progress this as simple as possible within the chaos and the shake-up that's happening in collectively and individually, the simplicity is where the ability to change happens quickly. And that's where we can all step in our power and own our life. And then the behaviors and the patterns and the lash outs are less because we care.
Mm. I love everything you said, obviously. But the interesting thing is when you were saying about me finding my voice and using my voice, it was the opposite of what you did. I found my voice through shame and guilt.
Hmm.
So I learned in my childhood to be quiet and to be as invisible as possible if I wanted an easy life.
Hmm.
And I can't remember whether I've told this story, but I'll just recap it very quickly. So at age 18, I was stood outside a bank waiting for it to open. Very early morning, sun was shining in England. I know, Kelster breeze. And I saw this guy coming down the road, this older guy with a stick. He was blind. And I was watching him, and there was loads of people around. And I was watching him and watching him, and I was watching his trajectory and thought, he's going to hit that lamppost. And I'm watching and I'm watching and I'm watching. And I didn't want to stand out from the crowd. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard, because that was my survival. And I watched this guy, nobody else said anything. And I watched him slam into this lamppost. And I felt absolute shame and massive guilt in that moment that I did nothing to save that guy from having that awful, I mean, that must have been a horrific trauma and shock for him. He had no idea it was coming, and he really walked full pace, slam into this lamppost. And it was that day that I promised myself I would never be quiet again, much to Ian's disappointment. But I promised that I would speak, even if I was scared, and I would speak even at the risk of being told to jog on or F off or whatever, which is was one of my greatest fears, is to be chastised in some way. And that was the day that I promised that I would always speak. And so I have always spoken, but it's not easy. Like, I've spoken and then cried for a week. I've spoken while my knees have been shaking. I've spoken when I really, really didn't want to, but I knew it was going to benefit the next person along. It wasn't even going to benefit me or my family. It was going to benefit the next people, because the next people might be too scared to speak. And it's my duty to speak for them. And so I've always spoken, but it is terrifying and it is exhausting at times. And there are times when I'm pushing through my own fear to do it. But that day, at 18 years old, when I saw how I'd let that person down so badly, gave me enough guilt and shame to promise I'd never do it again. And so standing out from the crowd in that sense was the answer. Because if I had only been brave enough to stand out from the crowd, I would have saved him from that awful injury. And I remember the lady that came to help him, she shot me a look, quite rightly, which was, how could you have let this happen? And she was absolutely 100% right. I had absolutely no defense for not doing anything. And that was a life-changing day for me.
It's sometimes, though, I think it's again how we interpret it and what meaning we give it. And out of something really horrifying that you watched happening and didn't avoid, something really amazing happened. You know, there are those moments where I'm like, if that didn't happen, you know, would that have changed the trajectory of your life, as in how you stand up for other people? And to me, I call them the hidden gifts in adversity, because what you just shared triggered a memory for me. I had two different situations where I stood up and spoke out, where I felt the deepest injustice spoken right in front of me. And both were situations where, in one case, women bitched about their husbands. And in another case, a close friend of ours bitched about her husband, aka a really good friend of Rob's, and nobody dared to say anything. And I stood up and did. And my knees were shaking. It was so confronting to speak out, but I felt I had to, for Rob and for his mate. And I don't know, and I'm afraid to say that I might not have spoken up if Rob if Rob hadn't passed and I had the widow card, which is a wild card. You can say whatever you want when it comes to a situation like that. You've got all the right to say it. Nobody can blame you for it. Nobody can judge you for it. And I played it, and I played it well in both cases. And in both cases, I walked away shaking and really nervous about it, and so proud of myself that I did speak up, because it was not easy. But that widow card gave me the right to speak up. And for you, it's the same thing, you know, something that was horrifying changed the trajectory of your life and how you started speaking out about something when you see injustice or when you see danger. And I think that's what we need to focus on, because you own your story. You know, it's not that you're trying to hide that part of shame or guilt or something away. You have used it for something really beautiful, even if it's sometimes not in Ian's favor, but I love that you do that. I love that you share your story, and I was really proud that I stood up and said something about it, because I did not like the way these husbands were spoken about, or this husband was spoken to in front of all of his friends, you know, and I thought, not on my watch. So I took out my widow card and played it, and yeah, I wasn't just proud of myself, but really freaking scared afterwards, walking away shaking.
Because courage is
But,
not the absence of fear.
No, not at all. Absolutely
That's
not.
not what it is. You know, I mean, I'm pretty good in the moment. I'll be pretty strong in the moment.
Oh
And
yeah.
then, as I said, I stood up to an institution once over being prejudiced against one of my kids for their ASD. And I went all the way. Like, I went to the education department, I went to the Human Rights Commission. I mean, I was like, this is not on. But I cried and cried and cried for about 2 weeks. I was so upset about the whole thing. So it's not one or the other. It can be both.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Feel the fear and do it anyway, hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, guys, thank you so much. We're on the hour, so I know I'm very mindful of your time. And look, as always, the conversation is always so rich and deep and so complex. And I love that we uncover the complexity beneath all of this, because I think it's worth having these conversations, particularly in these times, that I feel like we all need to go out into the world a little bit more mindful, with the intention of being kind, like not nice. Like, someone called me nice the other day. I went, how very dare you? I am not nice. I'm not nice in the fact that I won't just roll over and take it. Do you know what I mean? I've got boundaries and I will reinforce them. I'm kind for sure. Like, I don't want to go and hurting people. I said, I don't think you know who I am. I'm not a nice person. So that was really interesting. But to go out with the intention of being kind, just having some compassion, assuming the person on the other end is doing the best that they possibly can, even if that is lacking, and move on with love. Like, that is the most courageous thing we can do right now.
Yes.
Love it.
Thanks so much, guys. I will see you hopefully next week.